Hello, welcome back to the video lecture series for Introduction to the Art of Programming using Scala. We continue looking at graphics, and in particular we're moving on to another setting of Graphics2D. We're going to look at the font. So one of the calls that we can make on a Graphics2D is called drawString. And so we can demonstrate using this. We'll come up into here into the code that we've been building to draw our panel. And well, first I'm actually going to change the paint. I'm just going to turn it to a boring black color because it will show up well with the font. And then I want to call drawString. Now we can look inside of the API at the drawString method. You pass it a string and either two floats or two ints. And so the string I want to draw there is, we'll go with a very simple standard string. And just to illustrate something, I'm going to draw this at 0, 0. And then the question will be, where does this pop up? Now you know that 0, 0 is this top corner, and you probably notice immediately it doesn't say hello world anywhere. Actually, it did draw, but the 0, 0 location is, imagine that you are writing on lined paper. You know, if you take yourself back to kindergarten or first grade when you had the triple lined paper and every letter had to go from the bottom line either to the middle line or the top line depending upon what letter it was. Well, the 0, 0, the Y value that you specify is the lower line. So hello world is being written right up here, just outside of where we can see it. If we want to be able to see it, we need to lower it down a bit, and we can do that by, say, putting it down at 50. And now you can see it. So this corner right here is x equals 0, y equals 50. This has been dropped down 50 pixels. It's halfway to the top of our rectangle, and it prints out hello world. Well, what if I wanted this to come up in a larger font, or maybe some other font? Well, for that I have to change the font setting. And so we can call setFont before we draw our string. And I have to pass this a new font object. Well, how do I make a new font object? Well, it's clearly going to be new font, and there's going to be something inside of here, but what is that something? So we go to our API, and in java.awt there is a class called font, and you can read all of the description of this. But when we create it, the way in which we're going to create this is we give a name, which is a string for the font that we want to use, a style, which could be things like plain or bold or italic, and a size for the font size, generally measured in points. So let's say I wanted to make this font bigger. What could I use for name? Well, it turns out you can use any name for a font that's installed on the system. There are also methods for getting hold of the list of fonts that are available on a system, but that kind of goes beyond what we want to do. Plus, if you move your program from one system to another, some of the fonts that you are using on one system might not be available on another system. And so Java guarantees you that there are a few fonts that are always available. The serif font, the sans serif font, and a dialog font in there, and a monospaced font. And this also gives us the Roman baseline as an int. So the ones that are strings, serif, sans serif, monospace, and dialog are some fonts that you can use, and you'll be guaranteed that they are available on every single system. So I want to actually write my hello world in monospaced font because that will look a little bit different. How about I make my monospace font bold? and then I want to make it not a 200-point font, a 20-point font. Not found value font. Indeed, we need to import it or add it to our growing list of imports here. From AWT, and there you go. We get Hello World, and it is drawn out in a large monospaced font, and we can still change the color of our rectangle. So fonts are fairly simple at this level. There are a lot of other details that you can go into. So for example, if you want to be able to center a string left to right, well, then you have to know how big it's going to be when you draw it, and there are methods that give you things like line metrics for drawing things, and I generally use the get string bounds if I'm going to do this, but you have to provide something called a font render context, and so this involves a lot of details that I'm not going to go into and that the book doesn't really go into. You can find out how big a string is going to be drawn so that you can position it appropriately, but that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're going to do here. So that's pretty much what I'm interested in you being able to do with drawing strings to your graphics and doing fonts. And in the next video, we'll look at how we can adjust a clip.